She went missing for weeks, and then Caitlin Clark came back like this. She disappeared from the court in pain. Nobody knew if she'd ever look like herself again. And then, out of nowhere, Caitlin Clark did something in her last 3 games that even her own coaches didn't see coming. Stay with me, because what happens at the end of this video changes everything you thought you knew about where the WNBA is headed. If you've been sleeping on what's actually happening in Indiana right now, you're about to feel very behind. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why every broadcast network in America is fighting over this 24-year-old point guard. Before we get into it, if you care about women's basketball actually getting the respect it deserves, hit that subscribe button right now. Not for me. For the players who've been grinding for years waiting for someone to finally tell their story right. This channel exists because of you, and every subscribe tells me to keep digging for the truth instead of the noise. Let's get into it. The injury that almost derailed everything. Back issues. That's the phrase that sent Fever fans into a panic earlier this season. Caitlin Clark, the most watched player in the league, missing time again, just 1 year after a groin injury wiped out her entire 2025 postseason. If you remember last year, you know how brutal that was. Clark went through a cycle of 4 games off, 4 games on, over and over, never able to find a real rhythm. For a competitor who lives on flow and chemistry with her teammates, that kind of stop-start season is close to torture. So when the back issues showed up again this year, the fear was real. Was this going to be another lost season? Was the league's biggest draw about to spend another summer in a suit on the bench instead of a jersey on the court? Here's where it gets interesting. Instead of fading, Clark came back and did something that immediately silenced the doubters. The comeback nobody saw coming. In her return stretch, Clark strung together some of the best basketball of her young career. She became the first player in league history to put up 40 or more points and 10 or more assists in a single game. Days later, she followed that up with a 27-point, 11-assist double-double against Connecticut. Over her last 10 appearances heading into the All-Star break, she was putting up nearly 22 points a game on scorching efficient shooting splits, well above 45% from the field. And here's the part that should stop you in your tracks. She's doing all of this on a career-low number of minutes per game. Fewer minutes than any season of her career, and she's producing more efficient numbers than ever. That's not luck. That's a franchise being deliberately careful with its most valuable asset, and a superstar proving she doesn't need 40 minutes a night to dominate a basketball game. But don't get comfortable yet, because the story around her health is far from finished. And what the Fever's medical staff decided to do next is going to matter a lot more than you think once we get further into this video. A homecoming, a draft, and a rivalry that won't quit. All of that led into the 2026 WNBA All-Star Weekend, hosted for the first time ever at the United Center in Chicago. The latest date on the calendar, the event has been held since 2019. This wasn't just another exhibition. This was a genuine spectacle, built around one of the most anticipated individual matchups women's basketball has ever produced. Caitlin Clark finished second in fan voting behind Dallas Wings guard Paige Bueckers. Because of that voting result, the two automatically became captains, and then a coin flip, decided by honorary general managers WNBA legends Cynthia Cooper and Teresa Weatherspoon, sent them to opposite sides of the court. Clark would lead Team Weatherspoon. Bueckers would lead Team Cooper. Two of the most talked-about guards in basketball on a collision course in front of one of the largest all-star crowds this league has ever assembled. If you know anything about the Clark-Bueckers storyline, you know this rivalry runs deep. It goes back to their college days, when Bueckers' UConn Huskies pushed Clark's Iowa Hawkeyes to the brink in a Final Four thriller decided by a controversial foul call in the final seconds. Bueckers has openly admitted she's still not over that loss. Fast forward to now, and Bueckers is in the middle of an electric second pro season, with some analysts even suggesting she's been the better player over the past year while Clark battled injuries. That debate alone has kept basketball media arguing for months. And it's not just Bueckers. Angel Reese, Clark's rival dating back to their explosive 2023 national championship battle, was also picked into the weekend, landing on Team Cooper, ironically making her return to Chicago, the city where her WNBA career actually began before she was moved to Atlanta. So picture the stage. Clark and Aya Wilson leading one side, Bueckers, Reese, and Brianna Stewart leading the other. This wasn't a laid-back showcase game. This was a genuine measuring stick for who actually runs women's basketball right now. And I promise you, the tension in that draft room was not an accident. The money behind the moment. Now here's where the story gets bigger than basketball. This All-Star Weekend wasn't just about bragging rights. It was a direct reflection of just how fast this league has grown. The WNBA enters this milestone 30th season fresh off a record-breaking 2025, where the league drew somewhere between 2.5 and nearly 2.9 million fans across the season, shattering the previous single-season attendance record that had stood since 2002, and that record was set with more teams and more total games than this current era even has. Television numbers have followed the same trajectory. Just weeks before All-Star Weekend, a regular season fever game pulled in over 2.5 million viewers, becoming one of the largest audiences the league has drawn in more than 2 decades, trailing only a handful of other fever broadcasts. Think about that. 3 years into her career, Caitlin Clark is still single-handedly rewriting the league's television history, game after game, week after week. That's exactly why sponsors like Aflac are now pouring real money directly into these all-star events, offering tens of thousands of dollars in supplemental prize money for the skills competition and three-point contest, numbers that would have been unthinkable in this league a few years ago. The twist you didn't see coming. But here's the twist that a lot of casual fans completely missed. Despite all that hype around the Clark-Bueckers showdown, Clark did not compete in Friday night's three-point contest. She officially declined her invitation. Instead, fans watched her show up in a lighter moment, going head-to-head with the Dude Perfect crew in a basketball-themed game of musical chairs, and yes, she won. Why skip the three-point contest during the very weekend built around her rivalry with Bueckers? Team management has been extremely intentional this year about managing her body after everything that happened in 2025. The priority isn't a Friday night exhibition. It's making sure she's fresh for a real shot at a championship run later this year. That's the story behind the story. A front office quietly protecting its franchise player instead of chasing every spotlight moment, even when the spotlight is standing right in front of them. And that's a very different picture from the noise you might have heard floating around online this week about secret restrictions or backstage conflict. The real story is simpler and honestly more interesting. A team making a calculated bet on the long game, with a player who has already proven over and over that she doesn't need to play every minute to change the sport. So where does this leave the league heading into the second half of the season? Clark heads into the stretch run fresh off a career-best defensive stretch, playing fewer minutes but producing at an elite level. Bueckers is in the middle of a breakout year that's forcing everyone to reconsider the pecking order. Reese is starring in her return city, and the league itself just posted some of its biggest attendance and viewership numbers in over 2 decades. If you think this rivalry cools off after Saturday night in Chicago, you're not paying attention. These two are about to spend the next decade colliding in bigger and bigger moments, and the numbers say the entire country is going to be watching every single time. If this breakdown gave you the real story instead of the noise, that's exactly why I do this. Subscribe, because the moment something real happens in this league, an injury update, a trade, a record night, you're going to want to be the first to know, not the last. Drop a comment and tell me who you think wins the next Clark-Bueckers head-to-head, because I have a feeling that answer is about to get a lot more complicated very soon. I'll see you in the next one.